Well, that day I was overworked. I was doing 4 jobs. And I'd come to my wit's end. I was at work and I was crying. And I said, Jesus, if you are real, let me know because I need your help. And that was the end of that work day. It came about later, approximately within 3 weeks. I had went home from the same job and laid down. There was a difference that evening, though. Soon as my head hit the pillow, all of a sudden I was somewhere else. It was all dark, and I was floating. And I looked down, and I was floating over fields. I could see all of them, a patchwork of fields. And I slowly glided over them. And I thought, what's going on? What is this? And all of a sudden, I didn't feel myself flying higher. I felt my whole body starting to ascend to a different height. And it was getting darker and darker. And soon I could see the stars around me. And I thought, I must be awfully high. Why am I not cold? I should be cold. It's dark. I could feel my arms and my legs. They weren't cold at all, and I was barely dressed. And I looked off at my left hand, but there was nothing there. And I looked at my right hand, and there was nothing there. And I looked down back underneath me toward my body, and it was no longer there either. And all of a sudden I thought, I have no body. I'm here. It feels like I'm in body, but there is no body. And I could feel the wind blowing around molecules that my body had become. There was probably millions of molecules that I could feel. They were all connected, but they were not connected. And I could feel the wind blow around each and every one of them all at once. It was a very weird feeling. And all of a sudden, I was standing in total darkness, and there was something on my right. I was short, very short, and I realized I was a child, and someone in a robe was standing to my right, and there was 2 more standing to my left. And I asked the one person on my right, where am I at? And they said, you are in the void. And I thought, whoa, what is the void? And they said, this is what happens right after you die. You are here with us. And I looked around. In front of me, in the distance, there was a very bright light. And I said, what is that? And the person said, that is heaven. And I said, can I go there? And they said, no, you're not ready yet. And I says, well, when do you go to heaven? I mean, you're in space. You have no body. How will I even move from one spot to the other? And the entity said, you use your will here. Well, what do you mean, will? And they said, I want you to think about something you want right now more than anything else. And I thought, And I said, I want to see my daughter. And at that time, my daughter was only a baby, less than 2 years old. But I was standing there, and I wasn't an adult, I was a child. And I was very confused. And they said, just concentrate on wanting to see your daughter. I closed my eyes and I concentrated, and all of a sudden I had moved into another spot somewhere. I didn't know where because it was still dark. But in front of me, there stood my daughter. And I recognized her, and I walked up behind her, and I said, I can see her. And the voice said, wait, there's more. And all of a sudden, without walking, I moved into her body. And I could feel her love for me. I knew how much she loved me, and I felt so incredibly stunned by this feeling. But the other thing that kind of stunned me was she was not 2 years old. She was a grown woman, probably 18, 19 years old. And suddenly, I thought, what's going to happen next? And whoosh, I was right back in that spot looking at that bright light. And next to me were the people in the garments. And I said, can I stay? And they said, no, you have to go back. You're not ready yet. And all of a sudden, I was back in my room, laying on that bed, and I could feel like a vacuum. All these molecules were flying back at me, and they were all coming together, and I knew they were going to collide. And I held my breath, and the pain in my head became more and more, and I reached up and I grabbed my head, and all of a sudden all the molecules collided, and I was together again. And I sat up quickly, because I just didn't know what had happened. I was shaking. My whole body was trembling. I was still, it was like being hit by a car or something. I had been hitting so hard my head hurt. I didn't know how to explain it. And the only other time that I'd had this happen in my head was when, later on in my life, I had recalled the account of seeing the Sasquatch 40 years later. And I don't know what happened that night, but I think it was the answer to my question, Jesus, if you exist, let me know. And Jesus let me know that he did exist, where I would be after I died, to take all my fears and worries away. And I knew I was never going to have that vision again until I was ready to die. And I never have. I've had a lot of dreams, but I've never had that vision. And believe me, I can tell the difference between a vision and a dream. And that was one of the most outstanding things in my life. Many, many things happened to me. But when I put them all together in my head and I wondered why at the end of my lifetime, I go, you know, all these things exist because I've experienced them. And then something said, hey, you know those exist. Why don't you come look for me? Because I exist too. And I realized it was Christ. And he had come to my door and asked to be let in. And I got up and I made up my mind. The next day, I went to church. I learned, I educated myself in the Bible, and I was alone, but I didn't need anyone else to help me because Christ was there with me. I believe in God, and before I did not. He is there, and the more I learn, the more my eyes are open. I'm enlightened now, and I see that people in darkness cannot understand this. But when you seek Him and He lets you in, you are His child. I was baptized in His name and became His child and was born again. And I am still on that journey. So I hope someday you all get on that journey too, because it is very real and very powerful. See you later.